My name is Cora. I am 29 years old, and for most of my life, I have been a quiet observer, someone who learned early to find solace in the gentle rustle of leaves and the steadfast companionship of books rather than the unpredictable currents of family affection. This is the story of how I learned to speak, not with anger, but with the quiet, unshakable strength that comes from profound loss and the slow, painful rediscovery of self. It is the story of my daughter, Rose, and how her brief, beautiful life taught me everything about love, and her death, everything about boundaries. I grew up in the muted shadow of my older brother, Leo. He was, and is, the sun around which our family orbits. Leo, now 32, was born with an effortless charm that captivated our parents, Diane and Richard. From his first steps, which were met with a party, to his first C+ on a report card, which was framed as evidence of a well-rounded, non-nerdy childhood, his life was a series of celebrated moments. Our parents, now in their late 50s and early 60s, were the architects of this dynamic. They weren't cruel people, not in the overt, monstrous way you read about. Theirs was a softer, more insidious form of neglect, a quiet but constant affirmation that my achievements were expected, while Leo's were exceptional. When I won the statewide science fair in 8th grade with a project on hydroponics that took me 6 months to perfect, my parents offered a distracted, "That's wonderful, dear," before turning to my father to discuss the new tires needed for Leo's car. When Leo made the varsity basketball team as a benchwarmer his junior year, they hosted a dinner for the entire team and coaching staff. I learned to stop seeking their approval, to pour my energy into my studies and the few, deep friendships I cultivated with people who saw me for who I was. I found my value not in their praise, but in the quiet satisfaction of a difficult problem solved, a well-written essay, or the loyalty of a friend who remembered my birthday without a reminder. I met my husband, Noah, in a university botany class. He was a landscape architecture student, a man who spoke of soil composition and root systems with a passion I found utterly captivating. He came from a family that was boisterous, warm, and unapologetically affectionate. The first time I had dinner at their home, his mother spent 20 minutes asking me about my pediatric physical therapy studies, her eyes bright with genuine interest. His father clapped Noah on the back and declared him the luckiest man in the world for finding me. I felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign tribe, their customs of open love and mutual support so alien to my own experience. It was with Noah and his family that I first understood what unconditional love felt like. Noah and I married 3 years ago. We bought a modest bungalow with a large, untamed garden in the small city of Havenwood, a good hour's drive from my parents' sprawling suburban home. The distance was a quiet act of self-preservation. When we announced we were expecting a baby, Noah's parents wept with joy. They started a college fund for the baby before we had even picked out a crib, and they knitted a mountain of tiny, soft blankets in every color. My own parents' reaction was muted. "Oh, that's lovely news," my mother said over the phone. "Did I tell you Leo is thinking of buying a lake house? He's doing so well at the investment firm." They came to the baby shower Noah's mother threw for us, but they spent most of the time in a corner, talking to a distant cousin about Leo's recent promotion. Rose was born on a crisp autumn morning, the air smelling of wood smoke and fallen leaves. She was so small, a perfect, warm weight against my chest. She had Noah's dark, curling hair and my own gray-blue eyes. Holding her, I felt a love so fierce and protective it was like a physical force, an anchor in the chaotic sea of new parenthood. Noah's parents were at the hospital within the hour, their faces streaked with happy tears. My parents visited the next afternoon. They stayed for 20 minutes, held Rose with a kind of stiff formality, and left when my father remembered he had a tea time at the golf club. In the 6 months that followed, Noah's parents were a constant, gentle presence in our lives, visiting weekly to rock Rose to sleep so we could nap, or bringing over hearty stews we could eat for days. They documented every tiny milestone on their cameras, creating albums filled with pictures of Rose's first smile, her first giggle, the first time she grasped my finger with her tiny hand. My parents visited once more on their way to a weekend getaway at the very lake house Leo had purchased with their significant financial help. They held Rose for a moment, commented that she seemed fussy, and seemed relieved to hand her back. Still, I persisted. I sent them weekly photo updates and videos of Rose's progress. My mother would sometimes reply with a single-word text, "Cute." My father never replied at all. 2 months before Rose died, Leo and his long-term girlfriend, Sophie, announced they were throwing a massive housewarming party at his new lake house. My mother went into a frenzy of planning, not for the party itself, but for the family's role in it. She called me daily to discuss what they should wear, the gift they should buy, the impressive people Leo would have there. The party was scheduled for a Saturday in June, the same day we had planned a small dedication for Rose in our garden with a few close friends and Noah's family. When I gently reminded my mother, she sighed. "Oh, Cora, we can't miss Leo's party. This is a huge milestone for him, a testament to his success. You understand. We'll be thinking of you all, of course." I wanted to scream that dedicating our daughter was a milestone too, but I swallowed the words, as I always had. The familiar ache of being second best was a dull, constant companion. The week before she died, Rose had a sniffle. The pediatrician assured us it was a minor cold, common in infants. I stayed home from the clinic, cuddling her on the rocking chair, her warm little body curled against mine, her breath a soft whisper. By the weekend, she was her cheerful, babbling self, her gummy smile a beacon of light in our lives. I didn't know that every moment was a gift I was about to lose. Our world ended on a Tuesday. We had put Rose down in her crib around 8 o'clock. She had been happy and playful all day. Noah and I ate a quiet dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. The baby monitor, usually punctuated by soft sighs or sleepy murmurs, was silent. Utterly, unnervingly silent. I woke at dawn with a cold knot of dread in my stomach. Rose usually stirred around 5 for her morning feeding. I crept into her nursery, a room we'd painted the color of a soft sunrise, with hand-painted birds on the walls. She was in her crib, on her back, just as we always placed her. But she was still. Too still. "Rose?" I whispered, my voice a thread of sound in the silent room. I touched her cheek. It was cool. The moments that followed are a fractured nightmare in my memory. My own shriek, a sound I didn't recognize, Noah's feet pounding on the hardwood floor, the frantic, futile press of his hands on our daughter's tiny chest, the calm, detached voice of the 911 operator, the flashing red and blue lights painting our quiet street in colors of panic, the grim, compassionate faces of the paramedics, the ride to the hospital, a wailing siren heralding a loss that had already happened. A gentle-faced doctor in a quiet, private room told us the words that cleaved our lives into a before and an after. "I am so profoundly sorry. It appears to be sudden infant death syndrome." Noah sagged against the wall, a deep, guttural sob tearing from his chest. I stood frozen, the words echoing in a silent chamber in my mind. SIDS. A diagnosis that was not a diagnosis, a reason that was not a reason. It was a label for the unexplainable, a cruel thief in the night. We had done everything right. The firm mattress, the bare crib, no blankets, no bumpers. We had followed every rule, and still, the unthinkable had happened. We spent hours in that sterile room, holding our daughter's cool, still body, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the tiny perfection of her fingernails. We kissed her forehead, her eyelids, her little hands, trying to pour a lifetime of love into one final goodbye. Sometime during that blur of grief, I remembered I had to call my parents. My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I choked out when she answered. "It's Rose. She's gone. Last night. SIDS. There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched for an eternity. "Oh, Cora," she said finally, her voice flat, devoid of the shock or horror I expected. "That's just awful." It was the tone one might use for a canceled flight or a rainy vacation day. "We have to plan a funeral," I whispered, desperate for her to be a mother, to offer comfort, to share in this unbearable sorrow. "Yes, I suppose so," she said. "Keep us posted on the arrangements." And that was all. No questions. No offer to come. No, "I love you." Noah's parents, by contrast, were already in their car, driving through the morning traffic to be with us, their own grief a palpable force of love and support. The next few days were a fog of administrative horror and crushing sadness. Noah's parents were our rocks. His mother helped me choose a tiny white dress for Rose to be buried in. His father handled the funeral home, shielding us from the most brutal of the logistical details. My parents called once. "When is the service?" my father asked, his voice businesslike. "Saturday at 2, I told him, at Willow Creek Memorial Garden." "Saturday," he repeated. A pause. "Diane, isn't that the day of Leo's party?" I heard my mother's voice in the background. "Oh, dear," my father said, coming back on the line. "Cora, that's the day of Leo's housewarming. We've already RSVP'd. We have to be there." I was sure I had misunderstood. "Dad, this is Rose's funeral. Your granddaughter's." "We understand that," he said, his voice taking on a tone of strained patience. "But we can't let Leo down. It's a very important event for his career. All the partners from his firm will be there. Please," I begged, the word tearing from my throat. "Please, just come. Even for a little while." That's when my mother took the phone. Her voice was meant to be soothing, but her words were daggers. "Cora, I know you're upset, but try to see the bigger picture. A life is a life. Leo's future is being celebrated. Rose, she was only with us for a little while. You're young, you can have more children. But this party is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your brother. She was only with us for a little while. You can have more children. This party is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The words didn't just hurt, they hollowed me out. In that moment, the years of quiet sadness and feeling second best crystallized into something hard and clear. The love I had so desperately craved from them wasn't just limited, it was non-existent. "I understand," I said, my voice eerily calm. And I hung up the phone. Noah found me on the floor of the nursery, staring at the empty crib. When I told him what my mother had said, his face, already etched with grief, hardened with a fury I had never seen. He wanted to call them, to scream at them, but I placed a hand on his arm. "It doesn't matter, Noah," I said, the emptiness inside me vast and cold. "It's always been this way. I just never saw it so clearly before." The day of the funeral was achingly beautiful, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. Rose's casket was a small, white box, adorned with a spray of pale pink roses and baby's breath. Standing beside it in the Memorial Garden section for infants, I felt a profound sense of detachment, as if I were watching a film of someone else's tragedy. Noah's hand was a vice around mine. His parents stood beside us, his mother's arm a warm, protective shield around my shoulders. Friends from work, neighbors, and Noah's extended family formed a small, compassionate circle around us. My own family's absence was a gaping wound. During the service, I saw on my phone that Sophie, Leo's girlfriend, had tagged my brother in a series of photos on social media. There they were, on the sun-drenched deck of the new lake house. My parents were in the center of one photo, smiling broadly, champagne flutes raised in a toast while, miles away, their granddaughter's tiny body was about to be committed to the earth. Watching the casket being lowered into the ground was the moment the protective numbness shattered. This was real. This was final. My baby was gone. Noah's father had to hold him upright as he tossed the first handful of soil. Noah's mother held me as I did the same, my body racked with sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. In the week that followed, Our house was a mausoleum of grief. We moved like ghosts through rooms that echoed with the silence of a missing baby. My parents did not call. They did not text. 1 week after the funeral, my mother finally phoned. "Cora, how are you holding up?" she asked, her tone bright and casual, as if a week were a respectable grieving period. "My daughter was buried without her grandparents," I replied, my voice flat. "How do you imagine I am?" "Now, Cora, don't be morbid," she chided. "We're calling to invite you and Noah for Sunday dinner. It would do you good to get out. Leo and Sophie will be there. They can show you the pictures from the party. It might take your mind off things." Take my mind off things. As if the death of my child was a fleeting sadness to be cured by party photos. That was the moment I knew something had to change. I couldn't live like this anymore, couldn't keep pretending that their scraps of attention were enough, couldn't keep forgiving their breathtaking cruelty. The part of me that had always hoped they would one day see me, that had longed for their love, died that day and was buried alongside my daughter. And in its place, something new and unfamiliar began to grow, a quiet, steely resolve. The weeks after the funeral bled into one another, a monotonous landscape of pain. Noah and I started seeing a grief counselor, a kind, wise woman named Dr. Meera Sharma. In our sessions, I began to unpack not just the crushing weight of losing Rose, but the lifetime of emotional neglect that had preceded it. Dr. Sharma gave me the vocabulary for my experience: golden child, scapegoat, narcissistic family system. With each session, the fog of my own confusion and self-blame began to lift, replaced by a painful but clarifying light. This wasn't about one missed funeral. It was about a deeply ingrained pattern of dismissal that had culminated in the ultimate invalidation of my deepest love and my most profound loss. "What do you want your relationship with your parents to look like going forward?" Dr. Meera asked me one afternoon. I thought of my mother's casual cruelty, my father's dismissive silence. I thought of Rose, who deserved grandparents who would have cherished her, who would have mourned her with every fiber of their being. "I need them to understand," I said, the words forming slowly, but with conviction. "I don't want revenge. I want acknowledgement. I need them to see what they did, to see the choice they made, and to understand the consequences of it. Before I can even think about the future, they have to face the truth of the past. And if they refuse," she asked gently, "then I'll have my answer," I said. "And I'll know I need to build my life far, far away from their influence." That night, I sat down and began to write. I didn't just write about the funeral. I wrote about the forgotten birthdays, the dismissed achievements, the financial disparities, the constant, subtle ways I was made to feel less than. I gathered the evidence of my life, the photo from my university graduation where my parents are looking at their watches, eager to leave for a dinner reservation with Leo. The text exchange where my mother brushed off my news of a promotion at work to gush about a new watch Leo had bought. I wasn't building a case for a jury. I was building a foundation for myself, a solid ground of truth to stand on after a lifetime of emotional quicksand. Then, I reached out to my extended family. I called my Aunt Janet, my father's sister, who had looked so confused at the funeral. "I was just wondering," I began carefully, "if you knew why my parents weren't at Rosa's service." "Oh, honey," she said, her voice full of sympathy. "Your dad told us his sciatica was acting up so badly he couldn't leave the house, and your mom had to stay and care for him." We felt so terrible for them, having to miss it. The lie was so bald, so self-serving, it took my breath away. They weren't just absent, they were cowards, hiding their selfish choice behind a veil of feigned illness. I spoke to other relatives, and each one told me the same story. My parents had crafted a neat, tidy narrative where they were the victims, trapped at home by infirmity, their hearts breaking for their granddaughter. The anger that rose in me was cold and clear. They would not be allowed to rewrite this history. 2 months after the funeral, I felt ready. I texted my parents. "I need to speak with you both. I will be at your house this Sunday at 2 o'clock. My mother's reply was immediate. "Wonderful, darling. So glad you're ready to move forward. I'll make that lemon chiffon cake you love. The casual assumption that I was coming to them for reconciliation, that a cake could smooth over this chasm, only hardened my resolve. This was not about forgiveness. This was about truth. I arrived at their house on Sunday, the house where I grew up feeling like a ghost. The scent of lemon and sugar hung in the air, a cloying sweetness that felt like a lie. My mother greeted me with a brittle smile, my father with a gruff nod from his armchair. Cake first, my mother offered brightly. No, thank you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I'd like to talk first. I sat on the sofa opposite them. From my bag, I took out a framed 5x7 photo of Rose, a beautiful shot Noah had taken of her laughing in a patch of sunlight. I placed it on the coffee table between us. My mother flinched, as if the image itself were an accusation. This is Rose, I began. Your granddaughter. The one whose funeral you missed for a housewarming party. The one you told me I could simply have another of, as if she were a broken toy. Cora, there's no need for this dramatic tone, my father started, his voice sharp with authority. Isn't there? I countered, my voice shaking slightly but holding steady. You lied to the entire family about why you weren't there. You told them you were home, that Dad's back was out. But you weren't home. You were here. I slid my phone across the table, open to the photo of them raising their champagne glasses, time-stamped to the exact hour of Rose's burial. My father's face went pale. My mother stared at the phone, then at the photo of Rose, then back at the phone. For the first time in my life, she looked utterly speechless. You didn't just make a choice, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You made your priorities clear. And then you lied to cover them up, because you knew how it would look. You knew it was shameful, but you did it anyway. I then pulled out the pages I had written, the timeline of a lifetime of being second best. I didn't read it all, just key points. The $10,000 you gave Leo for his down payment, while I was told to be more frugal to pay off my student loans. The family vacation to Italy you took to celebrate Leo's college graduation, while mine was marked with a dinner at a local chain restaurant because Leo had a big date he couldn't miss. This wasn't one mistake. This was the final, most painful expression of a pattern you established the day I was born. What do you want from us, Cora? My mother finally whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Not tears of remorse, I suspected, but tears of being caught. I want you to know that I see you, I said. I see it all now with perfect clarity. And I'm done. I am done trying to earn a love that you are incapable of giving me equally. I am done accepting a place at the bottom of your priorities. I am done allowing you to diminish my life, my joy, and especially my grief. I stood up, leaving the photo of Rose on the table. For my own well-being, for the sake of my marriage, and to honor the memory of my daughter, I need to step away. I cannot have a relationship with people who could so callously dismiss her life and my pain. Maybe one day, you will truly understand the depth of what you've done. Maybe we'll do the work to change. Until then, there is nothing more to say. I walked out of that house, leaving behind the scent of lemon cake and a lifetime of trying to be enough. As I drove away, I didn't feel angry. I felt a strange, quiet peace. I had spoken my truth. I had honored my daughter. The weight I had been carrying for 29 years had finally been set down. The consequences were theirs to live with now. The truth, the shame, and the silence of a daughter who had finally chosen herself. The 6 months that followed the confrontation were a season of quiet rebuilding. The fallout within the family was immediate. My parents, faced with the truth spreading among our relatives, retreated into a defensive silence. Leo, after an initial barrage of angry texts accusing me of cruelty, fell silent as well. But something unexpected happened. My Aunt Janet called, her voice thick with emotion. Cora, I am so ashamed of my brother. What you did took incredible courage. Please know you have family who loves you. Other relatives reached out, offering support, sharing their own stories of feeling overlooked by my parents. I realized I wasn't alone. I had just been looking for love in the wrong place. Noah and I poured our energy into creating a memorial garden for Rose in our backyard. We planted a weeping cherry tree and surrounded it with perennials that would bloom in succession, ensuring there was always life and color. The physical work of digging, planting, and nurturing was a balm to my soul. It was in that garden, on a cool evening in early spring, that my father appeared at our gate, unannounced. He looked older, smaller than I remembered. He held a small, potted dogwood tree. "I know I have no right to be here," he said, his voice rough. "But I read that letter you wrote. I've read it 100 times. You were right. About all of it. I don't know how to fix it. I wanted to bring this. For her garden. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. It was an admission." My mother's apology came a month later in the form of a package. Inside was a locket. One side held a microscopic, perfect engraving of Rose's portrait. The other was empty. The note simply said, "I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I don't have a memory with her to put in this locket. I am so sorry, Cora. More than words can say." Even Leo reached out. He and Sophie had broken up. He called me one night, his voice subdued. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, "about how I just expected everything. I never saw what was happening to you. I'm sorry, Cora. For everything, but especially for the funeral. I should have been there for you. For Rose. There has been no grand reunion, no magical healing that erased the past. Our relationship is now one of careful, deliberate boundaries. We see them occasionally on neutral ground. The conversations are quiet, tentative. They are learning to ask about my life, to listen without judgment. They are learning to speak Rose's name, not as a source of guilt, but as a member of our family who is deeply missed. My healing has come not from them, but from within. I started volunteering at a local grief support center for parents who have lost infants. Sharing my story and listening to others has woven a tapestry of communal strength around my own sorrow. I found my purpose not in changing my parents, but in helping others navigate the same dark waters I had. Last week, on what would have been Rose's second birthday, we held a small ceremony in her garden. Noah and I, his parents, and a few close friends. My parents and Leo had asked if they could come. I said yes. They stood at the edge of the garden, quiet and respectful. They didn't offer platitudes or try to fill the silence. They just bore witness to our love and our loss. As we released a single white balloon into the twilight sky, I felt a sense of peace. The wound of Rose's absence will always be a part of me, a tender place in my heart. But the open, gaping wound of my family's betrayal has begun to scar over, transformed by the power of truth and the courage to demand what I deserve: respect, acknowledgement, and the space to heal. My daughter lived for only 6 months, but she taught me how to live a lifetime, with honesty, with strength, and with a heart open not to those who would wound it, but to those who would help it mend. And that, I have learned, is a life worth living.